This episode was made possible thanks to generous supporters on Patreon.
This is the third part of the mini-series that I'm making for the so-called luxury chords. And if you haven't watched the previous part, you can do so on the links down in the description. In the first two episodes, I addressed the 7th chords and the 9th chords. And today it's the time for the next level, which is the 11th chords. As I said in the previous videos, the further we go with these extensions, we get progressively increasing number of chords, and it gets impossible to cover them all in a video like that, and also it's sort of pointless because listing chords just won't make you actually understand them. So I prefer to focus on the most common chord and to give you the knowledge how to construct them and how to understand them. Just like with the 9 chords, we can also think of the 11th as a simpler interval but an octave higher. And in this particular case, the 11th is actually a fourth but an octave higher. And this will make our life easier. Just like with the previous added notes, here we also have two types of 11ths. We've got the regular 11, which is just like a regular fourth, and we've got the sharp 11, which is essentially augmented fourth. And this is very much recognizable because it's part of the Lydian mode. And therefore it has a very characteristic sound. So now let's move to the chords, and just as before, I will start with the simple versions, and these are the added 11, which means that we don't have the 7th and we don't have the 9th, but we only have the 11th. So you can think of this chord as just a triad with the 4th or the 11th added to the chord. And here we've got the minor 11th. And a good example about how this chord could be used in a song is Beyond the Realms of Dead by Judas Priest. Here we've got B minor with an added 11 on top. And you can see how this 11th actually opens up the chord, just like with the added 9s, which you can see in the previous episode. But here we have kind of more ambiguous type of opening. The second option is, of course, to have the major triad with the added 11. Think of it as a fourth. And my favorite example for this chord is Always With Me, Always With You by Joe Satriani. Here you can also see the same type of ambiguous and somewhat airy opening sound. So with the minor chords, there is nothing special you need to play on top of it. You can treat it just like a regular minor, so you're free to use a lot of different modes on top. With the major, however, you're limited to use it only as a tonic and as a dominant. Because this fourth here is limiting the range of the scales that we use, and if you want to use Add 11 as a subdominant, then you will need the Lydian mode. And the Lydian mode, as we mentioned earlier, means that we need augmented fourth, which essentially means sharp 11. However, added sharp 11 is rather an exotic type of chord, and usually when you have sharp 11, it's normally accompanied by a 7th or a 9th. So a good example is, which is A major 9 with an added sharp 11, and I've got a beautiful example of how this chord is used in a song. It's the track called Anybody Listening by Queenstrike. And you can see how this chord is placed on the 6th degree in the minor key, C sharp minor, which pretty much is the same as placing it on the subdominant in the relative major key, in this case E major. And it gives this very typical for the Lydian mode and the subdominant feel, of course, this sort of surprise and question type of vibe. And from this perspective, of course, the scale that goes the best with this chord is the Lydian mode. It's important to mention that one should make a difference between the added 11 and the sus4 chords, which is just like with the case with the added 9 and sus2. The difference is that here we've got the major triad, and we also have the 4th or the 11th. And you can see that it gives some sort of richer sound. Whereas the sus4, it doesn't have a 3rd degree, because the 3rd degree is transformed into a 4th, thus giving less rich sound, and it also gives a neutral type of vibe to the chord, because the 3rd is what makes the chord minor or major, and here we don't have a 3rd. Now let's move to the more complex stuff. Now we have the 11th in its full-blown shape, which means that it contains the triad, it contains the 7th, and it also contains the 9th, which makes it a very big chord. And having big chords requires many strings and fingers, and this is why I will need the capo. I will start with the minor 11th chord, which is one of the most popular chords. Here we've got the minor triad, and we've got the 7th, minor 7th, we've got the regular 9, and we've got the regular 11. Now this chord actually sounds like if we play both A minor and G major at the same time. And this type of minor 11th chord has been very widely used in the 80s, and one of my favorite examples is Kaylee by Marillion. Here we've got the tonic, regular minor, and right after we've got the minor 11th. Another of my favorite examples is Waiting for a Girl Like You by Foreigner. And here we've got exactly the same case. We've got the tonic, and then we've got the minor 11th. The scales that go well with this minor 11 chords are the Aeolian and Dorian. The other minor 11 chords are rather in the sphere of the experimental music, and jazz. And I won't bother you much with them, except just to explain how to construct these. And essentially, you've got the minor 11th, where you can alter each of these degrees. And for example, you can change the fifth, you can make it flat, you can make it sharp, you can have a minor 7th, you can have a major 7th, you can have a regular 9th, you can have a flat 9, and you can have sharp 11. So now let's move to the major chords, and the most popular one is the major 11 chord, which is the following thing. And here we've got the major third, we've got the 7th, a minor 7th, which automatically makes the chord dominant type of chord. And we've got a regular 9th, and we've got a regular 11th. And essentially the only difference between this chord and the minor 11 that we talked about just a minute ago is actually the third degree. Minor, major. My favorite example of using this type of chord is I'm Not in Love by 10cc. Perhaps some of you will now say, but you used the same chord, you said that it's minor 11th. And you'll be absolutely correct. The reason for that is that when you have such big chords with 5 different notes, and it becomes very difficult to play, and quite often some notes are omitted, and you're probably familiar with this concept. And when we have very complex chords, and especially when we have a context, we can start omitting the fifth, the third, and even the root. And in this particular case, I'm not playing the third degree, but you perceive it as a major because of the context. So, to make your life easier, to play 11th chords, no matter if it's minor or major, you just have the root, and then you play a major triad whole step below. And this is how we get this. And you're all set, as long as you have context. Now, if we take the same chord, the major 11th, and we move the 11th and make it sharp, we get this very, very fancy type of chord, and it has the dominant type of feel, but it also has the Lydian type of feel. And this happens because here we've got the minor 7th, which makes the chord dominant, and we've got the sharp 11, which, if you remember from the beginning of the video, it's very typical for the Lydian mode. And I've got a very nice example how to use these chords within a song. And this is 7 Days by Sting, where it's used in a minor key as a flat second degree, which creates a very interesting type of tension. You will see now. So here we are in the key of A minor, and the sharp 11th chord comes here, and because of the mixture of this dominant and Lydian feel, it brings this urge to change, and it pushes you somewhere, and at the same time you've got this surprise and question type of feel because of the Lydian flavor, and what you essentially get is the feeling that somebody has asked you a very dodgy question. Now, since we have a chord that has Lydian and dominant type of feel, it's logical to suggest that we need some scale that has both of these flavors. And surprisingly, there is a scale which is called Lydian dominant. The last chord of the usable 11th is another fancy chord, which is major 9 sharp 11. I know the name looks scary, but essentially it's just major 9, just like the one that you can hear in the beginning of Crying by Joe Satriani. And if we take this major 9 chord and we add the sharp 11 on top, we transform a chord that normally goes well with tonic and subdominant into a very, very Lydian chord, which means that it's suitable only for subdominant in a major key, or it can be tonic if you play entirely in Lydian mode. And a good example of that is Flying in a Blue Dream by Joe Satriani. A lot of Joe Satriani today. And surprisingly, the mode that goes well with it is Lydian mode. So that's everything for today's episode. I hope you like it and find it useful. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments below which of these 11 chords pleases you the most and why. And if you like my work, consider supporting me on Patreon on the links down in the description, where you can get access to many interesting things like tabs, audio downloads, exclusive materials, and other things. And the membership starts as low as $3 per month. And if you prefer to support me by a single donation, you can do so by using the PayPal me link below, also in the description. And if you're a first-time viewer, subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell button to get informed when I upload new video. See you next time, and remember, practice makes perfect.